Hello everyone, in this video I'll be showing you a giant crown paladin barbarian multi-class build in Baldur's Gate 3, raging and smites. This is actually pretty powerful because when you're raging you can't use spells, but we can still expend spell slots on our divine smite, so this gives us some pretty good damage, and we also get all the fun of being a giant barbarian with their elemental cleaver. So I'll be breaking down the full build here. I think the barbarian is a solid one to start with, but you can start with either. They're both actually pretty strong. And we're going to be dexterity based on this one. So a stat spread like this can work well. If you want to be the face of the party, you can dump a stat and put points into your charisma for better just dialogue rolls. We're not going to be spellcasting as Paladin, and Divine Smite doesn't require us to have a charisma stat very high, so we can kind of divest in that. But if you want, you can use different items like the Gloves of Dexterity or the Constitution Amulet to be able to dump those and put the points into charisma, but I think that this works well. Alternatively, if you prefer having higher strength, we can swap these 2 points around. Level 2 Barbarian will give us the Danger Sense advantage on dexterity saving throws against trap spells and services, most commonly Fireball and Lightning Bolt. And also, we get Reckless Attack, so if we end up missing, we can use we can just basically make it so that we get advantage on our attack and roll the die again, but then any attacker will get advantage on attacks against us. At this level 3, we're going to take the Giant here, which gives us Vaprax Greed, increasing our carry capacity. The Giant's Rage damage is doubled on throw attacks, and we get Thaumaturgy here. So this is a nice thing because when we get large, then we can go around doing a bunch of different actions. Level 4 gives us a feat, and at this point, I would recommend increasing our dexterity to 18, or alternatively, we can add in Tavern Brawler. We can go the throwing route. So then we could use that to boost up our strength or constitution scores. Tavern Brawler is extremely powerful. At level 5, we get our extra attack, and we get the extra movement speed when we're not wearing heavy armor, and we get the Boot of the Giants, which can kick a target away, does 17 damage as bonus action, which is really nice because you can potentially knock people off of ledges and give them a little extra damage. Level 6, we can multi-class into Paladin at this point and take 2 levels of the Paladin, or we can finalize this and give ourselves the Elemental Cleaver. This can add a elemental damage choice, Acid, Cold, Fire, Lightning, or Thunder, and it gains the Thrown property, which makes it pretty strong because now we can throw whatever we want to throw in the game. At level 7, this is when we can also add in the Oath of the Crown. This also gives us the Righteous Clarity here, which gives proficiency bonus to attack rolls. That is really good to have because you can add a +3 or +4 to a target's attack rolls, and they're much less likely to miss. So if you have a great weapon master, it's going to help out them. Now at level 2, we get the ever-powerful Divine Smite in the reaction version, which we can apply onto our weapon to deal a little extra damage without even having to use our select a smite. For our fighting style, this is a different choice because we also can take defense, or we can take defense if we go with an armor choice, but we also can go with the dueling because sometimes it's better just to not wear armor and go with a clothing option. But otherwise, if you're going with clothing, take dueling. If not, we can take defense. I'll show you defense and how that works out. And for our spells, none of these matter because we can't really use them, but command. And the smites are nice, but these ones still require you to do a spell attack roll, so you can't use it like Divine Smite would. And the same thing with Bless, you lose your concentration, but it's a nice one to have too. You can also take the heal if you want to be able to heal your team. Level 3, we get the Turn the Tide bonus action and also Champion's Challenge. So you can use this to challenge all the enemies around us, which will make it so that they attack us. And this is really good because this will give disadvantage to attacks against any other target. While we're raging, we also get increased armor class, so that's good too. So then we can also go ahead here and take that healing spell since we already get command, which we're not going to use. At level 4, we get ourselves a Lay Hands charge for better healing, and then we get to take another feat. And then at this point, since we already got Tavern Brawler or to increase our ability score, Alert is a nice choice too for the +5 to initiative. Alternatively, again, the dexterity increase also works well. It just depends how you want to spec this out. Dexterity will just give us a better armor class and more survivability. Level 5, we get ourselves access to level 3 spells, and we actually set up a spiritual weapon before we get into combat, which is nice. So we don't have to really worry too much about that. We can take Branding Smite, and Magical Weapon will lose the concentration, but Aid doesn't lose its concentration, which gives us extra bits of health. Kind of okay. And finally, the Aura Protection. Now, if we would have taken our charisma even higher, this would give us a better protection. But a +2 bonus is not bad. You can even get it up to +3 if you take a 16 in your charisma. So that's just going to help out with our overall saving throws and survivability for the team. So for gear, we got actually a lot of really interesting choices. So the Bone Spike Helmet will give us a menacing attack that we can use freely, and this can be used every single turn. So that's nice. You can frighten your target using this. Alternatively, we could also go with something like the Scrabby Pugilist Circlet to give ourselves increased damage when we're surrounded by enemies, which we'll often be. Haste Helm is also a good choice early game, and even something like if you got this could add our charisma modifier to our damage. Not super useful, but unless you got a higher charisma, but yeah, that works well too. You could even throw on the Birthright Hat, but I think the Bone Spike works best. You got the Cloak of Protection, your preferred choice. Really just depends what you like to use. The Vest of Soul Rejuvenation, I believe, is the best armor choice here. So this will give us a health point when we succeed a saving throw against a spell, and we get advantage on dexterity ones. And then we can also do an unarmed attack. The big thing here is we took Tavern Brawler, which will increase our unarmed strikes. And if you're using a strength potion, that's going to jack up your damage quite a bit. It also gives you a +2 to armor class. And we can get our armor class up actually pretty high with this. If we got the Evasive Shoes, that gives us a 28 there. Now, I also have the Winter's Clutches as well. Whenever we deal cold damage, which we can with our Elemental Cleaver Cold, we will apply 2 turns of Encrusted with Frost on the target. Alternatively, if you're not using a shield, the Bracer to Defense work well, and you can go with a 2-handed weapon at that point. In addition to this, we could also add in the Luminous Gloves, which will apply Radiating Orbs whenever we do our melee attacks, which is nice, because this is still counted as clothing despite looking like literal armor. It's clothing, so that can work well. The Martial Exertion Gloves are nice too, but this makes you take a 66 damage to be able to get an extra turn. It's okay. Wondrous Gloves will give us a +1 to armor class, which works well as well. But I think that the best choice would be like the Luminous Gloves, because we can Divine Smite, and we get 6 Divine Smites per long rest. Now, the Evasive Shoes will give us a +1 armor class, but if we're going to go with the Snowburst Ring here, which will create an ice surface whenever we do a melee attack, because our cold damage will apply, I would actually recommend going with the Disintegrating Naywalker so we don't slip on ice. So that is a really good option there, or the Evasive Shoes, depends on your way of playing. I also have the Constitution Amulet, which puts our health to 155 and adds a +6 to our armor class. And then I also have a shield on and use the Fowler Alluve weapon, which we can set up with the Shrieking Song before we get into combat, because this is a weapon action. So we can use that to buff up and deal a little extra damage and apply a negative to the enemy's rolls. Also, if you wanted to go with something a little different, if you're going with an evil playthrough, the Shar Spear of the Night or Evening can be crazy good because we can hide out in darkness. This makes it very OP, so that's something just to keep in mind with that. It gets strong. Sword of Lifestealing can also keep you alive if we keep getting crits off, which can be nice, but I think it's better to go with a higher damage die weapon. The Knightfield Undermounted King is always a good choice too with this build, but I like Fowler Alluve because it's a 1d10 of damage, and then we can also throw it with this. So I also have Viconia's Walking Fortress, the best shield in the game, but use whatever's available, or you can use a 2-handed weapon, and something like the Baldur's Giant Slayer also works pretty well too. Noted, the Giant form doesn't actually stack with this form. However, if we have an Elixir of the Colossus, that will stack with the Giant's Rage. So I also have the Ring of Protection on there, but you could also go with the Killer Sweetheart for the free critical hit. The Ring of Flinging will give us an extra 1d4 of damage on our throwing attacks. If we wanted to throw a bit more, we can go with that. And the Ring of Regeneration will give us some more health. And I always recommend the Caustic Band for that extra 2 caustic damage that can be, or acid damage that can be really nice. And the Hellrider Longbow will give us a +3 to our initiative. So those would be the best gear choices. And for combat, so I precasted the Fowler Alluve Shrieking Song to be able to apply a little extra damage. You don't have to do that, but the first step in combat is we want to get our Rage on. So we're going to go with our Giant's Rage here, putting ourselves into that state, which will give us that extra damage die on our attack. So 4 damage when we throw an object, and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. On top of this, we're going to go with the Elemental Cleaver, and we're going to again go with the Ice version because this allows us to set up some extra damage. And what we can then go ahead with doing is we either can go in and attack. Make sure to turn on your Divine Smite reaction. So under your Reactions tab, we can go check these off so we expend our spell slots when we do our attacks. So now we got cold damage and radiant damage that'll apply on our attack. So we can go literally right into melee combat if we want to, or we can throw weapons. It depends on how you prefer to go with that. The Shrieking Song is now applied to everyone here, so we'll just go ahead with an attack. Boom. That's a lot of extra damage. Riders that just exploded everywhere. That was enough to knock this target prone, which is perfect, because then we can follow up with another attack here. Boom, creating another explosion with Fowler Alluve. Because if you got Call the Weak, it's going to actually create that big explosion. So this is really nice. We don't even have to expend our Divine Smites, but we also can throw our weapon. So it'll return to our hand. We can go ahead here with taking out a high priority target there. So I could also have moved, but you can see if we had an ice surface there, we took out the target. And then we'll finish off with a divine smite on this target here. So bonk. Yeah, a lot of extra damage afflicted on them. And if you need to like turn off your ice surfaces to keep your teammates safe, you can then put this to fire or lightning or something so that they don't end up slipping if there's specific areas that you don't want to ice up. But ice is great because then it creates a difficult terrain for them, and you can see it makes them slip and fall too. And here we got attacked by somebody that missed, so we got our Greater Kashigo counter here, which it looks like we're attacking with our sword, but we actually do an offhand attack. We had 2 reactions, that would have been a second one. Then we also got our Maul here, so you can precast this as well, because this is something that does not require concentration. And the Concussive Smash can daze targets. What's nice about dazing them is that you can potentially, whenever you apply a daze, it gives disadvantage on wisdom save. So if you have a teammate with something that has like a hold person or a command, they're going to be much more likely to land it. So that can be extremely effective as well. Another thing is we can go with our Champions Challenge or Turn the Tide outside of combat before we get into a fight, before we go into our rage. So you could apply this, it'll make everyone focus on you, and then you can rage. So yeah, that is a nice ability there. We also, again, have our menacing attack, so this can be very useful for being able to apply the scared condition or frightened condition. That was more than enough to take them out with the extra radiant damage that we got off on that. That's one of the beautiful things about the Divine Smite is it gives you extra damage on your attack. So we'll go and take this one out here. That wasn't enough, so we applied a Radiating Orb for 2 turns. It's -2 to the enemy's attack rolls. And then I guess we'll just go with another one, or we can go with a throwing attack as well. I'm just going to do the melee attack, take them out. This should be more than enough. And then for finishing move, we can go with a throw. You can also throw Nyrulna and have it return to your hand. So if you've ever just don't want to use Fowler or Louvre anymore and you want to swap out, the returning pike or the Nyrulna will actually allow you to swap their weapons, which is pretty nice. And we also got a bonus action, so any of your lifted abilities can work well. You can use Divine Sense, or we can also use the Boot of the Giants. So what's nice about the Boot of the Giants is we can ignore all the difficult terrain, and then we can potentially go and knock someone off of a ledge. That was more than enough to take them out, so that worked for our bonus action. But yeah, we want to try and kite people through the ice if possible. And now we're just going to go ahead with just throwing attacks, because you can see here, we can actually go ahead and take Nyrulna into our hands. Nyrulna does have that really nice area of effect attack, and then we can go ahead with applying the extra damage to Nyrulna. This becomes pretty crazy, because then we go ahead and throw it again, and this weapon's nice because it gives you that free swap. So boom, and then the extra damage riders popping around there. It's pretty good. I think Nyrulna is possibly the best weapon in the game for throwers, just because that extra area of effect. We just got to be mindful of it. I don't know why they ran over there. Boom, there it is. So pretty useful. Again, you also have the Champions Challenge if you have the if you haven't Channel Oath charged, so that can be good too, because you can go with that to make everyone in the area effect attack you. So let me know your favorite thing about this build in the comments. Hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in the next video.